I'm Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is Alter Ego Comics TV, episode number 176. Coming to you from Alter Ego Comics in Lima, Ohio, talking about the best comics this week, as well as a top 5 list, so stay tuned for that. First up, for me, is All New X-Men number 31, written by Brian Michael Bendis, artwork by Mahmoud Asrar. What else can I say about this book that hasn't been said before? It is awesome. The reason I picked this book this week is Bendis just writes all of these characters extremely well, but there are several laugh-out-loud moments in this book, which doesn't happen a lot in comics. There are very few times when I find myself laughing out loud when I'm reading a comic book, but it happened twice in this book.
You lolled?
I don't know what that means, but I laughed. Yes, lolled. That's, I don't know these crazy acronyms that the kids use today. And that's it. Yeah, it's basically, if you've been reading All New X-Men, this is a continuation of the story. If you haven't been reading All New X-Men, I don't know if I would pick up this issue and jump in with it. But actually, it is the first in kind of, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in this series. You got Angel and X-23 romantically involved. You've got the Last Will and Testament of Charles Xavier. And actually, I would pick this issue up. This is a good jumping on point because the end of the issue sets up the next several issues, which is a crossover with the Ultimate Universe. Spoiler warning. But if you've seen those solicitations, you know that Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man, ends up teaming up, fighting, hanging out with the all-new X-Men. So this is where you want to get on board with that. And that's it.
Sorry, so the time-lost X-Men from the 60s are going to be crossing over with an alternate reality. There's 7 beasts. And
that's what happens when you publish 200 titles a month instead of the 12 that you used to publish.
Right. My first pick this week is Original Sin 5.4. This is the Thor and Loki number 4. And it's co-written by Jason Aaron and Al Ewing, with art by Simone Bianchi and Lee Garbett, possibly Garbet. And this is the...
He's British, not French.
Okay. Maybe he used to be French. He's got some French ancestry back there. It's like Colbert. Yeah. Thor and Loki, this is the culmination... Oh, I'm sorry, not the culmination. This is the second to last issue of the Thor and Loki going off to find their sister, who we know is Angela, and dealing with fighting angels in an alternate dimension who are all angry with Odin. And this is the issue that really, really clicked for me. You get to see Loki be Loki and Thor be Thor, and another important Asgardian character who will not be named be another important Asgardian character who will not be named. And this just was great. It was firing on all cylinders. The ending wasn't... It was a reveal, but I'm not sure it was overly surprising if you'd been following the story. But it just really felt like classic kind of Simonson-era Asgardian Marvel adventures. And that's awesome. That's great. And we start to see things that are going to be setting up Thor getting ladified here in a couple months' time. So... just great. Original Sin, firing on all cylinders, even in the miniseries.
Someone actually, by the way, asked a question in, I think it was last week's episode, that you had been talking about one of the, I think it was Original Sins that we talked about last week with Dum Dum.
Yes.
And they specifically asked you how you felt about the core series.
About Original Sin itself?
Sin, yes.
I like it.
As do I.
I think it's
Moving
quite
right
good.
along.
Yeah.
Moving on, yes. Yeah, Original Sin is the best Marvel event this year so far. That's tough to say because I wasn't blown away by Infinity at all.
Was that actually
In
this
fact,
year?
I
lose track of time.
It may have been last year. I stopped reading Infinity at one point just because it just didn't work for me. But Original Sin has held my interest. I think there's enough for longtime Marvel fans and new Marvel fans. It's coming out on a very consistent, kind of quick basis. And as we've said multiple times, that the tie-in books are true tie-ins and actually mean something, where we're getting things revealed about these characters. The miniseries with Hulk and Iron Man was excellent, and I think is going to stand the test of time, at least for a little while. And it's something that we can hand to a new reader as well as a seasoned reader, and I think the Thor and Loki series, setting up Angela as their sister, obviously is going to be around for a little while.
Yeah. And I think the strength of any comic book crossover big series event lies in the concept. Civil War regardless of how the execution was a brilliant concept, and it sold a lot of books. Captain and Iron Man, opposite sides of a political rule. And the concept here is, the darkest secrets of every Marvel character being revealed is a great concept, and it's driving great stories. So, good on you, Marvel and Jason Aaron.
Yes. All right, next up for me is Wayward #1. This is written by Jim Zub with artwork by someone else. I don't have it in front of me because we only have one copy left in the store, and I didn't want to take it away in case someone wanted to pick it up. So, Wayward #1 tells the story of a half-Irish, half-Japanese girl who leaves Ireland, where her father lives, to go live with her mother in Japan. And it's got supernatural elements. It's got Japanese myth and legend elements. It's kind of fish out of water, so to speak, because the girl she has orange hair, and I guess a lot of Japanese girls have orange hair too, but it's usually like dyed or wigs
right.
or something.
Not natural.
But she doesn't look like a traditional Japanese girl, so she's kind of out of place. Her mother has to work multiple jobs to support her and to keep everything running on all cylinders over there. So she basically goes out and starts exploring the city and runs into some interesting characters. This is definitely being billed as a Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque book, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a breath of fresh air. The artwork is top-notch, and I wish I could remember it. I'm sure Josh in post will put the artist's name in if there's time to edit before we try and upload this, because we're shooting this 2 days later than we normally do, because believe it or not, we forgot to shoot a video this week. That's how crazy things have been here. So anyway, Wayward #1, it's a new Image #1. It's written by Jim Zub, who is probably most well-known for his creator-owned book Skull Kickers, and is now doing a bajillion other things, including the Dungeons & Dragons series that's coming out, as well as Pathfinder and other stuff.
He's doing the D&D one, too?
He is.
Wow, he's been pigeonholed
Baldur's
a little bit.
Gate, right? Is that what it is? I don't know. Oh, and Samurai Jack. He writes the Samurai Jack
the cartoon
thing over at IDW.
Yeah, wow.
So, Wayward, check it out. It's worth it.
Guardians of the Galaxy 18, Original Sin tie-in. When the Brian Michael Bendis Guardians of the Galaxy series kicked off a year ago, let's say, the one of the hanging questions in the air was how Star-Lord came back. Because the last time we saw Star-Lord, he and Richard Rider Nova and Thanos were in the Cancerverse, and it was all going badly for everybody. Also, Drax was dead, and we never really talked about how he came back either. This is the book that tells us. We see what's going on, what happened, and we get to see more Richard Rider. We haven't had Richard Rider on the stands
because
in
everyone
like 2
needs
years.
more Dick Rider, right?
Dick Rider.
Dick Rider is Nova.
No, I think it's different because as much as I love the Nova book, he's new. And he experiences all this stuff, which is great. You have a sense of wonder. You can introduce him to parts of the Marvel Universe. But Richard Rider's been, maybe not integral, but a significant part of the universe for a long time.
He's been the linchpin in the Marvel Universe since the 1970s.
And he was in the New Warriors, man, before they blew stuff up.
He's like 50 years old. He's as old as Peter Parker.
Is he?
I think so. So what's he doing? Because I remember having an issue of Spider-Man. It's got Nova and Peter chained to an anchor that's going into the water, and you'll probably find this issue in the cover scan and put it up there anyway. And that came out in the late 70s, early 80s. So this version of Nova has been around for a very long time, and I don't know how he was eligible to be in the New Warriors in the 90s because he was much too old.
It was awesome. You want to find out what happened to Richard Rider? This is where you do. If you especially if you like the Guardians movie, there's a lot of great dialogue and banter with Star-Lord and Richard in this, and Thanos is in it, so kind of a no-brainer. You can pick it up. If you know who Star-Lord is, you can read the book and enjoy it.
Excuse me.
Sorry, drawn by Ed McGuinness.
Yes.
He likes to draw anyone who's big like Thanos. Or the Hulk, of course.
Yeah.
Super man.
All right, so I'm going to cheat this week, and my third pick is The Death of Wolverine, #1, which doesn't come out until next week, but I have a copy right here.
Or depending on when you're watching this,
yes,
possibly
the exclusive Alter Ego Comics version cover.
Sure, exclusive.
It is. There's only actually there would be any store named Alter Ego Comics has one that says Alter Ego Comics on the inside. Anyway, Death of Wolverine. Want to talk about it because it is really solid, and I think some people may be scared off from picking it up because of Wolverine's status within the Marvel Universe over the last several years. He's just kind of everywhere. I shouldn't even say last several years. I mean, since the 1990s, when Wolverine, Punisher, and Ghost Rider were everywhere. They were in every book. They teamed up in their own series. They were part of the Fantastic Four. I mean, Ghost Rider and Wolverine were there, and then the Punisher flies by at the end. But this is supposedly the Death of Wolverine. It's a weekly miniseries that starts September 3rd. You'll never see me anyway. Written by Charles Soule, who we adore, and artwork by Steve McNiven, who did the art on Old Man Logan and Civil War, and he's just an amazing artist. So I'm here to tell you that it's worth picking up, and I think Josh will agree with me. We both read it. There's a lot in this. It's not just story, but there's a lot of supplemental material as well, which is very much like the director's cut of a DVD. So you get script pages, sketch pages. You get an interview with Len Wein, who's one of the co-creators of Wolverine. Complete package here. So look for it in your local shop next week, the week of September 3rd, I guess I should say, the week of Labor Day. And don't be afraid to check it out because it is worth picking up.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember is everyone gets all, let's say, pessimistic about death in comic books, but at the end of the day, it's all made up stuff. You know, I don't care if Wolverine's going to come back in 6 months, as long as the story of how he dies is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, people were all, oh, you can't bring Bucky back, and then Brubaker brought him back and made it awesome, and everybody loved it. So give it a shot, and I think you'll be happy with it. Or at least we were.
Yeah.
And my pick of the week is Batman Eternal 21, written by Scott Snyder and friends, with art by Fabok, the Mad Vulcan.
Jason Fabok.
Fabok?
Fabok. I don't know. I like him.
Jason
I like his art. It's pretty.
Batman Eternal is the Batman weekly series that's been going on for almost half a year now, and it is getting really, really good. I think, because a lot of people have fallen off of Eternal because it was kind of losing their interest, and I think I've figured out why. You've got a bunch of different storylines going on, presumably each one helmed by a different writer. And normally you expect those to peak and trough at different times, so that there's always some story that's at the peak while everything else is, building or getting drawn, so that you have kind of constant stuff happening. And because of the way the story's structured, we wound up with a lot of trough, a lot of story building for several issues across all the books, and it seemed like it was treading water. But we hit all the peaks this week. 3 or 4, at least 3 of the stories hit climaxes or semi-climaxes, turning points, and they are awesome. The cover, as you can see, is Alfred facing off with somebody, presumably in the mansion, with a gun out. And I love Alfred enough to know that would have got me to buy the book even if I knew nothing else about it. But we also get a culmination in the story of Jason Bard and Gordon's trial in prison. We get resolution with the stuff in South America, and just great. If you're a Batman fan, you should check out this issue because it will make you happy inside.
Or it could make you sad inside.
Well, yeah, I mean,
some stuff happens.
That's true.
Yeah. All right, so that's it. Not a big week for comics this week, but next week is going to be an avalanche of goodness. We've got DC starting their 3D lenticular, continuing the tradition of 3D lenticular covers in the month of September, and those are all Futures End one-shots, which take place during the storyline Futures End,
so
or the
5
future,
years
or something
in the
like
future.
that. You've got the Death of Wolverine starting, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But we're going to go back in time a little bit because last week this movie opened called Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, and no one went to see it, and made negative money, actually. So we thought now would be a good time to talk about our top 5 Frank Miller stories, Frank Miller comics. And so I'm going to start with, this shouldn't be a surprise, a no-brainer. Daredevil Born Again is written by Frank Miller, drawn by David Mazzucchelli, and it redefined the character of Daredevil for a generation. And just recently, I think it was last week, or 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about the issue of Daredevil, the original Sin tie-in, with Sister Maggie, and a lot of that Daredevil and his mother stuff was set up during Born Again. So just a story of tremendous importance for Daredevil fans within the Marvel Universe, and just in comics in general, because it was very much in the same vein as Batman Year One, and I don't want to say Watchmen, but it was that time of 1985, 1986, where you had The Dark Knight Returns, you had Daredevil, Born Again, Watchmen, all this stuff that was going on that was dark and gritty, and people really sat up and took notice that you could tell really serious, meaningful stories in comics, and that comics weren't necessarily just for kids. I think Born Again falls right in with those other titles. If you have not read Daredevil before, Born Again is a great place to start. I think so.
I'm not 100% sure I agree with that.
I think so. I think that the what's the word I'm looking for? The dialogue, the monologue that goes along with it. I don't know.
It tells you everything you need to know. It's absolutely, and it's a great book. And I think, like, Spider-Man, bad stuff happens to him a lot. He has the Parker luck. But it's only a certain level of bad stuff. And, like, Born Again, like
really bad stuff.
Matt's life is rough.
Yeah, Pete lives the pampered life compared to Matt Murdock. But it doesn't introduce the character of Karen Page, but it gives you, and I'm really curious. I would love to see the Netflix series go down this road, where maybe 2 years into the Daredevil series, we get Born Again presented on screen. But Karen Page, who is one of Daredevil's first loves, has been cast for the Netflix show. Oh, cool. So Karen Page will be on there. Anyway, Daredevil, Born Again. That's my first recommendation for best Frank Miller stories.
Cool. All right. Well, my pick, I guess, would be Batman Year One. It's the sort of definitive early Batman story, and it's actually barely a Batman story, and that's one of the reasons I really like it, is because it's about the city of Gotham, it's about the crime lords, and it's mostly about Jim Gordon and what it's like to be a good man in a bad city. And it's just...
That sounds a lot like the show Gotham that's coming out soon.
It really does. Who penciled that?
David Mazzucchelli, who also did Daredevil Born Again.
So Frank Miller and Mazzucchelli are good friends. And
they were the Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale of their day.
Of their day, yes. No, but it was right after they had the big Crisis on Infinite Earths where everything got rebooted. This was sort of the reintroduction of Batman. It was the definitive version where they fixed the little tweaks that they wanted to tweak in the new reality so that everything kind of lined up. And, it's really the Gordon is what I really love in the story. It made Jim Gordon far more believable, far more realistic, and far more sympathetic than he had been previously. In the 50s and 60s stuff, he was kind of comic relief. He didn't realize that Bruce Wayne was Batman, and he was a cop that had...
That's the TV show you're thinking of.
Yeah, but the comics, too.
Was Chief O'Hara in that?
No. So Batman Year One, far and away my favorite Frank Miller story.
There are so many good ones, and I'm going to go in a different direction here, because I don't know where you're going with Frank Miller.
Wherever you want.
But, you know what, I just thought of two, but I'll go ahead and weigh in on Sin City. I think that Miller's Sin City saga is definitely worth checking out.
And I would read a Saga Sin City crossover, by the way.
Yes. Brian Kivon, make that happen. It is what it is. I mean, many of you people have probably seen the first Sin City. I'm assuming none of you have seen the second Sin City film. But, I mean, if your stomach can tolerate it,
right.
Sin City is a great read from beginning to end, the multiple volumes. It went on for several years, and it was done as a series of miniseries. But it was groundbreaking again at the time. The way that it was drawn, that it was a series of miniseries set within the same universe, the same city. And, I mean, I was really kind of digging it in the late 90s, the mid to late 90s. But I reached a point where I just had to step back and take a break because I was overdosing on Sin City and I was having bad thoughts and I was killing people. No, it's very dark, and very pessimistic, but the story is incredibly solid. And I think the first film did a great job of bringing that story to the screen. But it may have been a one-trick pony. I mean, we saw it with The Spirit and probably something else. Sucker Punch to some degree. I think that audiences have very little tolerance today for that type of visual storytelling. I think that story is much better suited to comics than it is film. And I think we're seeing the opposite in the world of superheroes. You're seeing, superhero films which are doing a good job of creating a universe that you can touch and see and smell, and the Sin City universe is just it just stinks. No, you can, like when I saw Avengers, and I'm rambling at this point, but when you see Avengers, it's very difficult to tell what's green screen and what's not green screen. You can guess, but the technology is so good now that it's not Phantom Menace technology where you could tell that the entire thing was shot against a green
screen. Why does Yoda suddenly look terrible?
Yeah. But Avengers has done so well. So the Sin City films, I mean, that the whole thing is shot. They're probably in one room shooting the whole thing. Long-winded exposition here, but Sin City, the comics should absolutely be checked out if you're into dark, gritty crime stories.
Yeah, and I think Sin City was in some ways groundbreaking because it hit that noir vibe 20 years before.
Yeah. Or
maybe it just came back again through the cycle. But it's also really, and I'm, again, off the top of my head, I can't think of another third-party, independent universe that's as cohesive. I mean, Sin City, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of interweaving, there's history. The stories take place over several years with characters dying and coming back, and they're not told in chronological order.
Right.
So it's a very real feeling universe as opposed to something. I mean, because Marvel and DC were used to having this vast wealth of information, all these characters, all these different things, and Sin City manages to get that feel in one series of books.
Yeah.
So that's impressive. I guess I should have asked for a clarification at the beginning. Are we doing artist, writer, or
either?
Okay.
I was thinking writer.
Okay.
And didn't you suggest this topic? So
I did,
what do you
but
have in mind?
I'd just like to know what your rule. Well, no, I was thinking the Claremont Miller Wolverine. Probably just because I read Death of Wolverine.
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's a good one.
No, it's what was essentially the base story for the second Wolverine movie. The Wolverine goes to Japan, and it's super awesome. Miller's use of negative imagery. Like the blacking out with the things behind him, or the whiting out with the things behind him. The cityscape of they're actually in Madripoor, right? Or is it in Japan?
No, it's in Japan.
It's in Japan. Okay. The cityscape in the mega city that they're in is just amazing. The way you have ninjas flying against the sky. I mean, it's kind of the same thing we saw them do later in 300, but this is way earlier and in a mainstream book. And the characterization of Wolverine is really solidified in that series in a way that, I never really felt it in the XMen stuff until he had his solo adventures.
So. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get bits and pieces of Wolverine's character in the Claremont Byrne X-Men and just the Claremont written X-Men. But you're right, it wasn't until the solo first Wolverine miniseries that we really got a good handle on the character. All right, the 800-pound gorilla is probably Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. So we'll close out our list of top 5 with that. Again, published in...
We're not going to talk about DK2?
No one should ever talk about Dark Knight Strikes Back. Dark Knight Returns, a future story set in the future, oddly enough, with Ronald Reagan as president, when he was president when the book came out. Batman is an old, grizzled, retired... urban legend that hasn't been seen in forever, and eventually gets to the point where enough is enough, and he feels compelled to go back into service. We don't get complete stories on what has happened to the Robins in his life, but there is no Robin until a young girl named Carrie Kelly decides that she's going to be Robin and starts hanging out with Batman. Alfred is still around, although he would be extremely old at that point. He's still in there. You get some really freaky bad guys in the Mutants, and you get to see the future of Catwoman, excuse me, and Green Arrow, the Joker, Two-Face is in there. Is Commissioner Gordon in the story? I think he is.
I don't remember him being in it, but
it is Batman. Throw in a dash of the 1960s Adam West TV series with the grittiness of a Sin City or I don't know what. It's just Superman's in there too.
Oh yeah,
and oddly enough, now that I'm talking about this, we may see elements of the Dark Knight Returns in Batman versus Superman.
That's how they originally
The Dawn of Justice. I mean, that's how they build it.
Yeah,
yeah. They had, I don't know if it was Zack Snyder or whomever, but they were reading dialogue from the Dark Knight Returns. So. Who knows? I mean, it basically sets up this epic throwdown between Batman and Superman, but the story is really solid. The artwork, I think, is a little can turn people off a little bit, but personally, I'm a fan. And there is a rumor going around. Actually, it's not a rumor. It's more than a rumor, Adele. That there will be an artist edition or a gallery edition, is what DC is calling them. of
Well, the galleries are the ones that aren't necessarily complete, right?
Well, they can't call theirs artist editions. So IDW has the trademark of artist editions, but DC through Graffiti Designs is going to be doing the reprints of original art in the oversized format. The first book they announced was a Kelly Jones Batman book, and then they're doing Frank Miller's Ronin, and Dark Knight Returns is also on that list. So I will be all over that to get large size reproductions of Frank Miller's art for the Dark Knight Returns. So most of you have probably read those books, but if you have any other comments or suggestions as far as Frank Miller stories that you enjoy that you want to share with the world, let us know. I do want to briefly say that we are publishing this as an audio podcast as well. We put last week's episode up. You can find it on iTunes. You can also find it on Podbean. That's Podbean. We'll put links in the video, but also want to announce that we've launched a second podcast. Now that we have one episode up of the Alter Ego Comics, I started a new podcast where I'm interviewing comic creators when they have time and when I have time. It's called Comics Are Awesome. We'll put a link in the Yahoo notes, but the first interview is with Jim Zub, who is the writer of Wayward this week, and there's a second one that's up there already too, and I won't tell you who that's with, but tune into that. If you like them, please give them 5-star reviews on iTunes so that other people can see them, and continue to share Alter Ego Comics TV amongst your friends and family and people you don't even know. That's it. Have a great weekend. See you next time.